Welcome to rePROs Fight Back, a podcast where we explore all things reproductive health, rights, and justice. I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and I'll be helping you stay informed around issues like birth control, abortion, sex education, and LGBTQ issues, and much, much more. Giving you the tools you need to take action and fight back. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, rePROs. How's everybody doing? Welcome to a special emergency episode of rePROs Fight Back. I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and my pronouns are she, her. So y'all, we got to talk about what happened on Monday. It was unexpected. I had just finished eating and was chilling on the couch watching, some TV show, just relaxing, having a quiet Monday. I started off my morning being like, oh, what a relaxing start to the week. Basically, y'all, my bad. Sorry. When all of a sudden I get a text from a friend being like, oh my God, did you see the political story? And no. So I quickly go and click through the Politico link and holy shit, y'all. I knew it was coming to a degree, right? I knew they were going to overturn Roe. I thought I was a little more prepared for it to be more of a technicality than just a flat out Roe and Casey are overturned. I guess we're going to talk about what happened more in the episode, so I'll skip that part and just kind of go where my head is at. I'm in a bunch of places on it right now, right? I'm kind of numb. I think I had my mourning period of what this is all going to mean when Trump was elected and when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. I think I cried all my tears over this potential loss of rights then. I don't have that in me anymore, or I'm so burned out with all of the things that I just don't have the capacity for it anymore. Little column A, little column B, I'm sure. So a little numb, but I was instantly nauseous. Just the pit of my stomach just hollowed and I thought I was going to be sick. All I could think about is all of the people who need abortion who will no longer be able to get it. And first, let's be really clear. This was a leak. It is not a final decision. While it is likely the final decision, it is not formal yet. So if you have an appointment, if you need an abortion in the interim, you can still go get one with all of the caveats that all of you know already, right? There are already a lot of obstacles to accessing abortion, especially if you're in Texas or Oklahoma right now, but it's not easier in a lot of other places. So my thought just went to all of the people who are not going to be able to access care. And as we know, with so many things, that burden is not going to be felt equally by everybody. There are so many people who are already marginalized that this is going to disproportionately impact. And unfortunately, that means generally that it falls hardest on Black people, on people with low incomes, on people with disabilities, young people, the LGBTQ plus community. These are the people who are going to have a harder time accessing abortion. And they already do, right? That's already the case. And the loss of abortion rights under Roe, has the potential to be really devastating. So that's where I'm at. My gut was really nauseous, and I am tired and angry and burned out and ready to keep fighting, right? This isn't an end, right? We're not throwing up hands and giving up. We are going to keep fighting, and we'll get to that more. I guess I just wanted people to know where my head is at on all of this. And I'm sure we're all in various places with this right now. I'm hoping to maybe take some time this weekend to step away a little bit and just try to decompress and not stress about all of this and deal with that. and hopefully recover a little bit. It's been a long week, and when I'm recording this, it's only Wednesday. So yeah, I think I'll just say the fight's not over. We will keep fighting. Everybody should have the right to access abortion care. Abortion is health care. It is a human right. And the fight does not stop here. We will keep fighting. And I guess with that, let's just jump into this week's episode. I was so excited to have this person on for the episode. I really was so excited when she said yes. So we had Caroline Riley with Rewire News Group on to talk all about what happened on Monday, what it means right now, and what it will mean when this decision finally comes down. And we have some great recommendations for what you can do to fight back. So with that, let's go to my interview with Caroline. Hi, Caroline. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Jenny. Thank you so much for having me.
So I guess before we get started, maybe would you like to introduce yourself and include your pronouns?
Sure. My name is Caroline Riley. I am a reporting fellow with Rewire News Group, and my pronouns are she, her.
I am so excited. It feels weird to be like, I'm excited to have you here today. I mean, I am, but like, we're going to talk about some pretty horrible things. So,
yes.
So I guess deep breath.
Yep, definitely.
What happened on Monday?
So on Monday, if you were me, it was right before you were about to take your 8 o'clock sleep ruining nap.
Right, like you were just like so chill. I was watching
like, I had
TV.
Just put my feet up for the first time all day.
Yes.
And my phone buzzed, and a reporter at Politico obtained a leaked copy of the decision in the Dobbs case, which we anticipated we will, and still anticipate we will be getting sometime in June or July. And this leak is completely, I mean, I don't want to say unprecedented because I wouldn't be able to speak to like anything beyond modern history of the Supreme Court. But in modern history of the Supreme Court, we have never seen something like this. This is absolutely wild. Just on a, as the term goes, palace intrigue sort of level, the concept of a leaked Supreme Court draft is absolutely insane. It's just like nothing we've really ever seen before. And in that decision, it overturned Roe versus Wade. It was written by Samuel Alito, who I think with the nominations to the Supreme Court under Trump, there was a little bit of focus taken off of the existing conservative justices, Alito, Thomas, primarily.
Yeah, I don't think about him that much.
Exactly.
Like,
and I think
of Thomas more
don't.
than I think of Alito. Like he's just there.
Yep. And I think as soon as I knew Alito wrote it, I was like, this is bad. Even before I really dug into the text of the decision, because I listened to the Dobbs hearing and Alito was absolutely batshit. Like he was just, I mean, I would say even more so than Barrett, Kavanaugh. Like he was, you could tell there was so much venom in him for this right. And so, so they obtained a leaked copy of the Dobbs decision. In it, he not only affirmed the 15-week ban in Mississippi, which is an early gestational ban, he overturned Roe and Casey. And as Imani Gandhi from Rewire News Group pointed out earlier today, this case was sort of rigged from the beginning because the initial ask of the case was simply to assess the 15-week ban. But then after Amy Coney Barrett was appointed to the court, they added in the decision to also put the question of Roe on the table. So we kind of knew from the beginning, also just from the makeup of the court, that we were going to get a bad decision in this case. I think that some folks, myself included to an extent, though I've never been an optimistic person, generally speaking, were holding out hope that we could get a decision that maybe straddled a line, that maybe upheld the gestational ban, but didn't overturn Roe, that, you know, and that's not to say that that would have even been logistically much better, because upholding even a gestational ban would overturn certainly whole women's health, which was decided a couple of years ago, that said, if you want to pose a restriction, you have to actually put forth empirical evidence as to why it's not an undue burden. I think there was some hope that we were going to get a decision that maybe didn't go all the way, but with Alito being the one writing it, and I think people still are holding out hope that, this outrage that this has incited is going to prompt a change on the decision. I don't think that is the case. I think this is the decision we will get. I will be thrilled to be wrong about that if it happens. But I think as long as Alito is writing that decision, we are looking at exactly the draft that we got on Monday. If not exactly, we are definitely looking at the end of Roe and Casey. I cannot imagine he softens on that. If anything, I feel like this outrage might make him feel even better. Yep.
I will definitely put myself in the camp of the, I didn't think we were going to get a good ruling, obviously. I didn't think they were going to strike it down. I really thought they were going to go the route of overturning Roe without actually saying those words, and then trying to convince the media that hey, upholding the 15-week ban overturns Roe, even if they didn't say those words, is really the case I thought we were going to be in, of having to convince people y'all, this was really bad, and the media not wanting to say that. So I was not surprised, because nothing in this area surprises me anymore, but
yeah,
it just caught me off guard, because I really think I had it in my head that they were not going to utter those words we're overturning Roe and Casey. I thought that was maybe a couple of years down the line before they got that bold. It really caught me off guard that it's coming right now.
Mm-hmm. No,
even though I knew that the core holding was still going to be terrible and overturning Roe, I don't know why there was a difference in my head.
No, I think that that's fair. I think, for a while I've been saying to folks, this decision would effectively overturn Roe, right? Because if we uphold a 15-week ban, that essentially makes the undue burden standard, which has protected access across the country, moot. And so it would open the floodgates for states across the country. As long as abortion was technically legal, it would mean that, laws like SB 8 in Texas, which bans most abortions in the state after 6 weeks, it would mean that they basically can create any abortion restriction they want, as long as they say that abortion is still legal. So they can say yeah, you can't have abortion 5 minutes after conception. And that's technically fine once you undo Casey, because Casey designates the undue burden standard. And so you're right. We were always going to lose Roe one way or the other. And I think the fact that they just went for it and they didn't even try to look as if they were, beholden to stare decisis, or they really just don't care. And I think that is something that the right, that is something that anti-abortion advocates, that is something that evangelicals and conservatives have honestly always been really good at, is seeing an opportunity and taking it. And I think it's something we are not, folks in the abortion movement, certainly Democrats, are not fantastic at. We don't, not, they're good at sinking their teeth in when it's ripe, I think, so to speak. And I think Alito saw an opportunity and he took it. I think, with Ketanji Brown Jackson coming on the court, with Biden, there is a shift where, you never know. If we get another Democratic president, in 2 years now, and who would be next to retire? Thomas, maybe, there's a chance that we could rebalance the court a little bit. And, I think Alito said, fuck it, let's do it. Let's overturn it. And the decision is not coy about it. It calls Roe an egregiously decided case. It opens by saying abortion is a contentious issue that many people feel is the taking of a life. It is not, I read a lot of Supreme Court cases in law school, and lawyers are great at using fancy language to say horrible things. And he just used horrible language to say horrible things. It is not flowery. It is not nuanced. It is direct. And it is clear that his goal was to gut access to abortion in this country. And it's scary. It honestly is. There's really no two ways about it.
Okay. So maybe let's get to what does that mean right now? So we're recording just because God knows what's going to happen. We are recording on Wednesday afternoon on May 4th. So this is coming out tomorrow. So like in theory, nothing should change between now and then, but
Right.
Whatever. So like that's where I'm at right now. Like it could. What does it mean at this moment?
So right now, nothing changes. So abortion is still technically legal in all 50 states. And I hesitate to say abortion is legal in all 50 states because I know a lot of folks in the movement say that, and I think that that is true, and we don't want to scare people. But I think the reality is that large swaths of this country have already been living in a post-Roe world. And I think that we do a disservice when we say it's still fine, everything's fine. It's not fine. Like, even if we never got this decision, it would not be fine. But in all 50 states right now, you can, at some point in a pregnancy, access abortion in a much larger percentage of the country than will be the case when we get the decision. You can access abortion at multiple stages in pregnancy. You can access self-managed abortion through the mail. This draft of the decision does not change anything right now. And, I have been thinking about this question because it's something that we talk about a lot. And it's obviously something that folks are talking about because, there are concerns of patients who might turn on the news and see this and think that they have to cancel their appointments tomorrow. You do not. If you have an appointment, it's yours to keep. Like, this is not going to hurt access until we get the decision from the Supreme Court. I think if we want to look at this from a productive point of view, and I'm coming at this obviously as a journalist, so, this isn't advice, but, I had conversations with people in my life last night and the night before about getting pills, advanced provision pills. I think, we have been given the opportunity here to get a heads up. And we need to do with that what we will. We have been given the space to let our voices be heard before things become official, whether or not that changes anything. I'm not very optimistic about. But right now, the country looks a lot different than it is going to look when the decision comes down. There is more access to things right now than there will be in a few months. So if I lived in a red state, I live in Massachusetts, so I don't live in a red state. For me, the idea of getting advanced provision pills, which we can talk about, and I'm sure we will later on, about the availability of self-managed abortion for first trimester pregnancies rather. I know that where I live, chances are I'll always be able to access abortion. But if I lived in a red state right now, I would be going through aid access and purchasing pills through advanced provision. I would be buying Plan B. We have a little bit of a heads up here. I think it's not unreasonable or paranoid or scaremongering to act accordingly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've been trying to be careful when I'm talking about the abortion is still legal and being like, it is. Some exceptions may apply, right? Like, especially if you're in Texas and Oklahoma, like it's very hard to get in a lot of states, especially hard to get there. But like, if you have an appointment or need an appointment right now, please still go. But yeah, and I like the idea of thinking of this as like a bonus time to like get our shit together and like start thinking through what you need to procure to be prepared.
Mm-hmm. And, the good news, term used relatively, is that, there are a lot of folks weighing in right now who, due respect, don't have the range. And you are hearing a lot of things about coat hangers and herbal abortifacients and all these sorts of things. And the bottom line is there are groups of people who have been preparing for this moment for years. There are organizations that have been working on the ground, a lot of them, led by marginalized people for whom the protection of the law was never a full reality. And they are ready. They are ready to make sure that abortion is still accessible. They are ready to make sure that people have the resources to travel, to defend themselves against prosecution. There are people and organizations who have made sure that this moment would be one we were prepared for. And I think it's incredibly important, alongside acknowledging how horrifying and despicable this decision is and what a stain it is on our country's history, that there are people in this movement who are doing everything they can to make sure that people can still access abortion. There are providers who are fighting tooth and nail to make sure that their patients have what they need. There are, hotlines designated for people who need to manage their own abortions in states where they can't get procedural abortions in clinics. The resources are there. And I think, it's a really fine line. And you're right. There's a lot of nuance to saying abortion is still legal in 50 states. It's not that simple. But it also, we just need to be realistic about it. We can't, on the one hand, say everything's going to be fine. You can just take a pill and you'll be fine, because that's not true. Even though self-managed abortion is legal, we know that the use of it is going to mean different things, especially legally, for people in different demographics, people in different geographical regions. The implications are going to look different depending on who the person taking the self-managed abortion is. On the other hand, we cannot erase the work of people who have done everything to make sure we can be in the best possible situation right now. We are not, the language about coat hangers and back alley abortions is outdated, thankfully. And, we owe it to the people who have put in that work to make sure that the framing that we use when we talk about what happens next recognizes the work that they have put in to get us here.
Yeah, I think that is so important right now. Like, we don't need to be scaring people, which in stigmatizing self-managed abortion by using the coat hanger imagery. Like, it is not the 1970s. There are safer alternatives. So saying that abortion isn't going away when it's illegal, it's just going to become unsafe, is not true in this context, right? There are places in the world where that is true, but the US is not one of them at this moment. There are ways to access pills which are safe. So in the context where abortion becomes illegal, it becomes criminalized. And that's where your risk is versus unsafe abortion, which I think people need to understand. And which, when you start using the coat hanger imagery and stuff, it scares people from self-managed options. It may prevent people from understanding the options that are available, that they have access to, which may hold criminal risk, right? Like we already saw in Texas, like you may have to worry about prosecution, but pills are safe. So it's not a safety risk, it's a criminal risk.
Absolutely. And I think, just reminding folks, when you access self-managed abortion, either through an organization like Plan C Pills or like Aid Access, you are getting the exact medical protocol that you would get in a brick and mortar abortion clinic. They are not illicit pills. They are not off market. They are the medications that your provider in a state, like if I do self-managed abortion in a state like Texas or Oklahoma or wherever, I am getting the same medical protocol that I would get if I walked into my OBGYN in Massachusetts. They are safe. They are effective. And we have resources in place. Like I said, there's the rePRO Legal Defense Hotline for folks who do find themselves feeling like, there's a compromise in their legal safety. But we also have the miscarriage hotline. There are resources that, if you do take self-managed abortion and you do have fears either about medical or legal risks, we can't neutralize those things entirely because of the, the climate right now. But there have been efforts to make sure that people are supported in these decisions and that they are available to them. And at the end of the day, it's about making sure that people still feel empowered because, I talk to a lot of folks in this space and I've interviewed a lot of people and, I'm biased because she's one of my closest friends, Amelia Bono, who runs Shout Your Abortion, is always sort of my North Star on these sorts of issues. And, I interviewed her a couple of months ago when the Dobbs decision was being heard, or the Dobbs case rather. And, she said that it was kind of like fucked up from the start that we even thought abortion was something the court like the court never had the right to tell us that this was something they could give us or take away, and I think that's a really radical but very honest way of thinking about it. This is not, they're still our bodies at the end of the day. And I think that empowerment, even in the face of what is literally the worst possible scenario, will at least hopefully give people the fire to keep fighting. That this is not hopeless. This isn't the end for abortion rights. We still have so much fight in us. We still have so much that we can do.
We're tired, but we're not done.
Exactly. We're exhausted. But if there's anything this movement is good at, it's running on fumes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So now it's June or July, and this decision is the decision. What does that mean?
So it means that abortion is functionally illegal in half of the country, 26 states. Many states in the country have what are called trigger bans, which have been put in place already so that they go into effect immediately when we get a decision that overturns Roe versus Wade. And a number of states will also use the opportunity to pass, if not outright bans, other types of laws that will make abortion effectively inaccessible or illegal in the state, things like SB8. But trigger bans are already very common, and they're already on the books in, like I said, many, many states. So the latest statistic is that 26 states will have abortion be functionally illegal. So what will happen is we'll have what are called abortion deserts for broad swaths of the country, and then other parts of the country will become abortion havens, I guess is the word. Well, haven implies like
that you can go and get one.
But exactly, and that and that they won't be overloaded or overrun. I mean, we've already seen the impact of Texas's SB8, which is one state. And, the rate of patients in clinics in surrounding states has already gone up exponentially. That's one state who has banned abortion at 6 weeks, right? So multiply that by 26. And you put the burden of managing that care on the remaining half of the country. And that is a terrifying prospect, especially for a procedure that is time sensitive, right? So in the first, I think it's 11 weeks of pregnancy, for the early pregnancy, you can use a procedural or a medication abortion. But as we know, the later in a pregnancy an abortion needs to happen, the more logistical hurdles you might have. Even in liberal states, there are restrictions on later abortion. It means something as simple as taking a couple extra days off of work, because a procedural abortion later in pregnancy is going to be a little bit more to physically recover from, right? It's going to be harder to travel if you're, recovering from a later abortion. There are so many things that are going to happen that are going to be logistical nightmares that will make access, even in states where it's available, not great. So yeah, we are looking at the worst case scenario, basically. I think we've seen states like Connecticut recently passed a safe haven law that makes Connecticut like literally a haven for abortion care. And it is the most radical state in the country to do this. A number of other states have passed like post-Roe, Massachusetts being one of them, New York being one of them, post-Roe legislation that safeguards abortion in the state. One of the things that will be a new tactic that we're probably going to see from conservatives is the use of extradition policies. So if you do have to travel out of state to access your abortion, we will see conservative states use extradition policies to try to criminalize citizens in their state who get abortions in other states, which is a terrifying prospect considering travel is the only option that many, many, many Americans will have. And yeah, I mean, I could go on probably for hours about what we are about to face.
I have so many thoughts, so many, you hear 26 states and that is unreal and just overwhelming. But to give people who may not understand what this means an idea, we're not talking you can go to the state next door. We're talking these states are really in a big swath in the southern area of the country up into the Midwest. So you're talking about like vast swaths of the country where you're going to have to travel long distances, like with all of the caveats, right? Of like, if you are able to afford to travel, if you're able to take the time off, like abortion already hasn't been accessible for so many people because they can't afford it for a whole host of reasons. This will just make that so much worse. And as with everything, like the effects aren't going to be felt equally, right? Like Caroline said, she's in Massachusetts. She'll be able to have access. I'm in Washington, D.C. I should, in theory, still have access unless the federal government decides to mess around with D.C., which they can. Like, but if I can't, like, I have enough money that I can travel out of state. The burden of this is going to, as so often does, fall on Black and brown people. It's going to fall on people with disabilities. It's going to fall on young people, the LGBTQ community, people with low incomes. And they're the people who are already bearing the burden right now with Roe in place. But like, it's just going to be so much worse without Roe.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. I think that that is a critical reminder, which is, and that is one thing that has not changed from the days of back alley abortions, right? Which is that wealthy white women will always have access to this procedure, even if it means going overseas. Like they will always be able to terminate pregnancies, which I mean really gets to the root of why they're doing this, right? They're not doing this because they actually care about abortion. They're not doing this because they care about babies or fetuses or any sort of medical implication of this procedure. They're doing it because they know the right to determine what you do with your body with regard to family planning, pregnancy, parenting, is a direct correlation with the ability to self-determine your ability to earn, to make decisions about your life. They know that if they control the reproductive decisions of marginalized populations, because that is, like you said, who these laws are going to hit, they will keep them marginalized. It is a means of governed eugenics, essentially. It is saying that certain populations will not be able to engage in self-determination. And as a result, they will stay living below the poverty line. They will stay unable to access education or, job security or food security or, housing that they need. They will not be able to leave relationships that are unsafe or unstable. They will be reliant on people who put their lives at risk. It is simply a means to ensure that marginalized people stay that way. It has nothing to do with the procedure of abortion, the concept of life, nothing. And I think if Republicans could figure out another way to do this, and they do, they're doing it through voting, they're doing it through a number of pieces of legislation. It is simply a means of marginalization. And, your garden variety, like anti-abortion neighbor thinks it's about babies, but Samuel Alito just knows that it's about keeping people in poverty, keeping people marginalized, keeping people on the fringes of society in a way that prevents them from succeeding and holding power in this country.
And all of this is why the story right now is about overturning Roe and the loss of rights and human rights and not the goddamn leak. Like, I cannot even, like, yes, it's important that it is like the first time it ever happened and we can talk about like why it happened, whatever. But like the issue and the story is like what is going to happen to people who need abortions and what that means, this loss of this real attack on their fundamental human rights.
Yeah. And also, for what it's worth, I went to law school. I spent a lot of time around lawyers. A lot of my friends are lawyers. And I think that the person who leaked the document should be canonized. I think that we have upheld the Supreme Court to this sort of mythical status. When you're in law school, the concept of the Supreme Court is almost religious. Not almost, it is. The way that Supreme Court justices are revered is like cult like, I would say. It is a very bizarre and insulated institution. I think that for the first time, a lot of people are realizing that this is a political arm of government. This is not, like when you're in law school, you're taught all these different things. Like if you want to be a Supreme Court justice, you can't be political early in your life. You can't have, open political opinions as you're growing up. And, I'm sorry, Amy Coney Barrett signed on to a public letter saying that IVF should be, banned because they destroy embryos. Like, it is an illusion that the Supreme Court is not a political arm. It is an illusion that they are somehow above accountability, above reproach. And I think this leak, for obviously the decision itself is much more important. But if we are going to talk about the leak, I think it should be in praise of the fact that it has pierced through this mythical presence of what is essentially just 9 people who make decisions. Like it's, there is so much intrigue and like piousness about the Supreme Court, and it always has been this way. And I mean, after Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Barrett got confirmed, I think it's kind of a joke. I mean, I don't think we need to pretend anymore that, when you have an alleged gang rapist sitting next to an accused sexual harasser, Clarence Thomas, sitting next to Barrett, who couldn't name the constitutional protections. I think it's time we maybe drop the act and stop pretending that this leak somehow did harm to this unimpeachable entity. It's a government entity and it deserves accountability and oversight like Congress, like the judicial branch, like anything. Judges are not above reproach. And I think I'm glad. If I met the leaker, I'd buy him a drink. I'm all for it. And I hope I never do, because I hope they get to live out their days in complete, anonymous, I hope they are protected. I'm glad there was a national security reporter on the story, because I think that indicates that all the encryption and all the protections are there for them. But I am incredibly proud of that person. And I would assume it was a clerk. And to that, I say, fuck yeah. Good. Make them scared.
Okay. I think the one other thing that's worth touching on, as if this whole scale attack on abortion rights is not enough, this is going to have broader implications to a bunch of other rights as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think I want to preface it by saying, too, that I think that is incredibly important. I am seeing a lot of folks, and Biden did this when he talked, was it yesterday?
Time.
I don't, talking about this isn't just about abortion. This is about birth control. This is about this and this. And that is true. And I'll talk to that. But
abortion is enough.
Right. Even if this stopped with abortion, I hate that people I think it's important to say, this is how many things this is going to impact. So people wake up and realize that this has never been about abortion. It has been about, like I said, marginalizing people. What I don't appreciate is the idea that we have to tie this decision to other issues to make it more palatable for people, to make people be like, well, I don't care about abortion, but I do care about XYZ.
Yeah.
And I think that is how we got here, is the apologetic tone that even liberals and progressives take when they talk about abortion. Well, it's not just about abortion. It's about this and this and this. And that can be true. But if it was not true, what would you be saying, right? Would you still be saying we need to focus on this? We don't always need to couch conversations about abortion in what else these laws, what other kinds of issues these laws create, because the abortion issue itself is worthy of, all of the outrage. I do think it is important and critical to connect those dots to make the point that for conservatives, this is not about abortion. For us, it should be about abortion at this moment, because that is the right that we're losing. But for conservatives, I think it is important to point out that this was never just about abortion. This was always about using abortion because they have created this narrative that it's salacious, that it's contentious, that it is the taking of a life, all this other completely bullshit stuff that they have fabricated about what is essentially a medical procedure. they have used abortion as a conduit to get their way with other rights, gay marriage, trans rights, voting rights, birth control. All of these things will be on the table. And I think, it's interesting because when Roe was decided, it created the right to abortion as part of the right to privacy under the Constitution. And for a while, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was very critical of the Roe decision because she felt, and I have always agreed, that couching the right to abortion and the right to privacy is very tenuous because of what we're seeing right now. She said that the right to abortion should be instead placed in gender equity right, which I think probably would have, I don't have the legal prowess to identify what would have happened if that would be the case at this moment. I'm sure Alito would have found a way to say fuck you to that too. But I think that, there is a lot to be said about just sort of the way that the law is just kind of nebulous and the way that we have given these 9 people the ability to just sort of manipulate it and play with it however they see fit. And I think to that point, yeah, we do need to consider that if we let them get away with this on abortion, if Congress lets them get away with it, which they're really, unfortunately, one of our only hopes right now, which is not promising, we are going to see other rights topple. We will absolutely see Obergefell. We will absolutely see, a lot of folks are talking about Griswold, which is the birth control case, but I think it's important to say that Griswold only gave birth control access to married couples. It's actually Eisenstadt that gave it to unmarried couples. But we will see Griswold and Eisenstadt out of here. We'll probably see Eisenstadt first. I don't know actually what will happen to Griswold, to be completely honest. I think a lot of people are talking about it, but I think I can't see someone like Alito really caring what married people do. I think they're going to go after single people's access to birth control. But that's an equal.
I think it's going to be expanding the definition of abortion to get at it versus going after birth control head on.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be IVF. It'll be miscarriage care. We are going the way of countries like Poland, right? Where just a couple of months ago, a woman died of sepsis because her pregnancy couldn't be ended because her fetus was killing her, and they wouldn't terminate her pregnancy because abortion is illegal in Poland, right? That is where we're headed. This is, I do a lot of work at Rewire on connecting the dots between pregnancy loss, infertility, and abortion care. And again, the same way as I say here, if it was just about abortion and not about all these other rights, we should care. If it didn't ever touch miscarriage management, pregnancy loss, infertility, it would still be bad. I think if we can pull people into the tent by saying your right is also going to be an issue here, everybody knows someone who has had an abortion, who has lost a pregnancy, who has utilized in vitro fertilization, who has had a high-risk pregnancy. Everybody knows somebody, or they are somebody who's had that. If you've ever had a high-risk pregnancy, if you've ever lost a pregnancy, they're coming for you. If you have, miscarried early on and used mifepristone and misoprostol to complete that miscarriage medically, or had a DNC, first of all, you've had an abortion. Second of all, they're coming for you. This is so widespread, and conservatives know exactly what they're doing. And they do it with the trans youth bills as well. They latch onto what they know are the most socially, that evoke the most visceral reaction from folks, right? That's why they started with later abortion bans, and then they sort of inched up. That's why they're starting with trans rights and young people, because they know that they can scaremonger about that, and then they're going to inch up. They always start where they think people will, have the most immediate recoil reaction, and then they expand. And absolutely, this is the first domino. And I hate the canary in a coal mine analogy that I've seen people use, because abortion's not a canary, it's the coal mine, like, enough. But this is the first of many cases like it. This is the first of a massive gutting of civil rights and civil protections. And again, if it was just abortion, if it was stopping with abortion, that would be egregious. It is not, because it was never just about abortion for conservatives. And I think Republicans know that, and I think Democrats don't. I think Democrats think that they can piecemeal these rights off. Nancy Pelosi can say we need anti-abortion Democrats, and Joe can say I'm personally pro-life. No, can't say that anymore. You're either with us or you're not. This isn't a game. So, yeah, I mean, if you think that we can have pro-life, quote unquote, Democrats in the party, then you also need to understand that we're going to have to accept anti-gay marriage Democrats and anti-climate change Democrats, because it's all the same. You either want to gut the civil liberties, especially of marginalized people, or you don't. Abortion is not siloed off from this. It is one and the same.
That feels like a really good place to like wrap up, except we already got to this part a little bit earlier, but it's always good to end with like actions. So what can the audience do? Like, what actions can they take right now?
So I think the most important thing folks can do is to put resources, so money if you've got it, time if you've got it, visibility if you can, to organizations, not national organizations. So not NARAL, not Planned Parenthood. These orgs do important work, but they're going to be fine. Right now, I want to see money to the Abortion Care Network, which supports indie clinics, which already perform the majority of abortions in this country. And increasingly, that will become even more the reality as clinics and care shutters around the country. Always, always, always to organizations like Jane's Due Process, which helps young people in Texas access abortion and has also started expanding into helping young people in other states. Young people are one of those demographics that they've been basically living in a post-Roe world for a really long time. They need consent from a parent or a judge in 30 something, 36 or 37 states to access abortion. Money to Jane's Due Process. Money to the rePRO Legal Defense Fund and the rePRO Legal Hotline. The rePRO Legal Defense Fund is the organization that just bailed out Lizelle Herrera in Texas, who was arrested for murder when she went to the emergency room after self-managing her abortion. They bailed her out. So if you want to really make sure that the people who are caught in the crossfires of prosecution in our criminal justice system, when these laws do come down, make sure that we have the cash to bail them out. The rePRO Legal Defense Fund also does things like ensuring that people have housing, ensuring that their trials have good experts, have the right resources to defend them. I think that is probably one of the most critical parts of this space that we will be needing to bolster moving forward, is making sure that the most marginalized people among us, or the people who will be caught up in criminal prosecutions, have every single resource they need. Beyond that, I was talking to someone recently with Jane's Due Process, and she said that when you're with family, talk about abortion. And I know that that is what everybody says, but one of the things that she touched on that I thought was really incredible was that you don't know who's sitting at that table with you. If you have a niece or nephew or a younger sibling or someone, or even a sister, a friend, someone your own age, and they need an abortion, they need to know who the safe person in the family is. They need to know that, if something happens, they have someone to drive over the state line. They, be loud about it. The best thing anybody can do that is free, that is, you don't need a computer or anything, is talk about it. Don't continue to perpetuate this idea that abortion is a volatile issue. Normalize it in your conversations, normalize it in your friend circle. If you are friends with someone who's anti-abortion, deal with that. Don't have sex with people who are anti-abortion, which is a personal piece of advice. But yeah, I'd say money to rePRO Legal Defense Fund, money to the Abortion Care Network, money to Jane's Due Process. Check out the Shout Your Abortion website. They have so many resources right now on how to obtain and distribute abortion pills, and what doing SMA, self-managed abortion, looks like, and making sure folks have the resources to get through that. And I would also say, as a little plug, to please follow and donate to Rewire News Group, because we are really the only news organization that is going to be on the ground covering this with the, a decade of expertise. We have attorneys on staff who know these issues better than anyone, and we're not afraid. I think a lot of news organizations are going to be afraid. They're not going to be talking about these, even if they're covering these issues. Nobody's going to give you the honest, reporting like we are, because we always have. And we're ready, and we've been preparing for this moment since the news organization started. So
that's who I always turn to, and have since I've been working in this field for so long. We won't talk about it, but for so long. And I will just add on to the you never know who's at the table part. Just super quick, unrelated to abortion, but my previous life, when I was getting ready to move to DC to go to grad school for work in global environmental policy, I was at a big dinner with my mom, and there was like assigned seating, and I got stuck at a table with a bunch of people I didn't know, and they were asking me what I was doing, and I talked about, going to grad school for whatever, and one of the people at the table was the head of a huge roofing company, and he was harassing isn't quite the word, like gently giving me a hard time about being an environmentalist. And I was really impassioned about talking about like why we needed to care and why we needed to care about forests. And then fast forward like a year or two later, and they started a huge green roofing line. And not saying I take credit for that, but like you never know, like where you can like plant seeds. And I am a huge believer in planting seeds that may bloom later when somebody else says the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, lead by example. If you've got money, give it to the organizations that are going to do direct action to the most marginalized people, and be loud and proud about it, because abortion is great. It's a social good. It gives people their lives. It's freedom. And there's really no nuance to it. Abortion is freedom. Abortion is healthcare. You're either pro-medicine and, we're having these conversations about appendectomies and tonsillitis now, but it's the same thing. So.
Well, Caroline, I could talk to you forever, but I have to let you get back to your day because things are crazy right now. So thank you for being here. It was a pleasure talking to you as always.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. It was really, really a pleasure.
Okay, y'all. I know that was a lot. Deep breath. Like we said, this is a long haul. This is going to be a long fight. As often said, this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. If you need to step away at any point, step away, recharge, regroup, and hop right back in. This is going to be a long haul fight, and there are no better people to be in it with than all of you. I am so happy to have all of you involved and so happy to be fighting by your side. So let's keep up the fight. And even though things may look bleak right now, it is not the end. It is just the beginning of this fight. So with that, I will hopefully see you all in 2 weeks. Hopefully we don't need to have another emergency episode. If you have questions or anything you would like to email me, you can always email me at Jennie, JENNIE, at rePROsFightBack.com. Or you can reach out to us on social media at rePROs Fight Back on Facebook and Twitter, or rePROs FB on Instagram. And keep up the fight, y'all. For more information, including show notes from this episode and previous episodes, please visit us at our website at rePROsFightBack.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at rePROs Fight Back, and on Instagram at rePROs FB. If you like our show, please help others find it by sharing it with your friends, and please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.